Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 21st.
So moved.
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next is the department head reports. We have three from the police chief, the town clerk, and the finance director.
Motion to place all three on file unless someone wants to pull one and talk about it.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item is old business, and it's to acknowledge the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management's decision from which precludes designated resident parking at the town landing. The DEM, as you are aware, contributed a substantial portion. It's more than 75%, $80,000 of the $107,000 that was spent refurbishing the town landing grassy area, which had become a town landing figure eight that was a parking area, turned into a parking area. When that process was completed, we were able then to restore to something closer to its original condition of town landing. Hence, those who have asked us, why did we use DEM money to do that? That's the reason that we were able to do a substantial upgrade to the property. The petition that we've had from some in the community has been, we think there ought to be restricted parking that is restricted only to residents. We have been informed that that is not the allowable constraint imposed by DEM upon the use of their funds. So our options are really two: to change our ordinance, and I would suggest to you that the ordinance is in need of some change just to make it more relevant to what we now perceive the term community versus the term resident means, to be more clear in that. But our other option is to petition that, is to appeal that. And so that's where I see we stand. We've been told what the official position of DEM is. If we choose to do so, and I would argue that choosing to do so constrains us to be able to enforce it, and I don't believe that we have the ability to do that with a police force the size we have, because to have in the summer a police patrol at Town Landing would unnecessarily, I'm being exaggerating it, but deliberately so, would be difficult to sustain traffic and other control within the community. That's my summation for you. Are there others that have anything to add to that, Administrator? Did you have any? Okay. Community comment. Go ahead.
Well, I had a question for the town administrator. Were you the one that communicated with DEM about this issue?
There were both of us did. I did, and the solicitor did as well.
And did they give, was there like a threshold? Like, if they give us a certain percentage that goes towards the project, then we can't do this? Or is it like if we accept $1 towards the project, then?
If we accept, state funds, grant funds, yes,
Okay.
automatically it's applicable.
And the solicitor, have you ever had any experience, going back to DM to try to ask them to change this, or?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's been done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think what Mr. Mushin said is correct. You need to petition them, and there's a process for that. And there's some forms that you can use and some other things too. But you need to ask. The official position is no, funds were used for this, so you can't have designated parking for residents, which is what the real issue is here. But you can ask for that, and there is a process to do so.
Okay.
Should we have you do that?
I don't mind.
I'm happy to make a motion to have the solicitor make a formal petition to DEM regarding the parking at town.
Landing.
Second that.
The motion is made and seconded. Is there discussion on that?
Yeah, what are we asking him to do?
Make a formal petition so residents can have some parking designated for residents.
Only thing I'm gonna ask in connection with the motion is how many spaces? And before you vote on it, you might want to hear from your residents.
Right.
So open it up for discussion.
It is open for discussion. Please, thank you.
So Andrew Stokel from South of Commons. There are really 2 points. I'm sort of new, like since 2012 I've been here. The first is this sort of process seems very untransparent. You can see we had a petition, 187 people signed it. Some of them are here today. It's not clear how this ever got started. It seems like there's a disregard for what Hester Simmons laid out. It was supposed to be for town residents only. Who would submit a grant to override and take away those rights that the town had, which is limited access for this land? Like, I assume the grant gave it away, but who decided to do that? Well, there was no public hearing on, there will no longer be resident-only access to the property. That seems like a big problem. But secondly, I hope the petition process keeps it open. I think the town should consider like paying back the $80,000. That's not that much. That's a lot to give up. If you put up a bench, do you have to ask DEM for permission to change the property? That's what it looks like to me. You can't touch that property. Town can do nothing without permission from DEM. So we've given away the property that Hester gave to the town. So, and I don't know how to make it more transparent, but it seems like whatever was asked of DEM, the request I thought I heard you say was supposed to represent somewhat of what the petitioners asked for, which is what's the process by which we justify access. Instead, it had nothing to do with our resident parking spaces, set-asides allowed. That wasn't the request. The request is, what's your process for considering this? Instead, we hear an answer that wasn't announced before, whenever that was, December 4th meeting or whenever that was, that it was a done deal. DEM said no. I don't know what question was asked, but that wasn't the question that you tabled that said you'd ask the town manager and the police chief to come up with acceptable rationale for having set-aside spaces for residents. That's what I thought you said. And I went and listened, and it was sort of what you said. It's a little weird they'd come and say, no spaces. That wasn't the question. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't answer, there's a petition process. Instead, we hear it's a no from DEM. So those are my 2 observations, and I hope you can keep it open and get a little more input and consider buyback. That is, buyback, escape from the grant obligations. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, David Rockerman from Old Harbor Road, and I wrote up a piece that took me 4 minutes to read. I'm going to spare you. I'm just going to talk to you instead. I was a little upset when I wrote it, related to a lot of what Andrew just spoke about, and I just really wanted to share. I was looking back through some of the meetings from this fall, and as I was trying to find some of the details that were discussed in those earlier meetings, I went back a little bit further than I meant to, and I caught some piece about the community center and haircuts being given that you were talking about, Mr. Mushin, which I didn't know that happened there, but I think it's pretty wonderful. And it was one of those little moments where, even though I feel upset about this, I was appreciating everything that happens here and that happens in town, and it makes me feel like the type of community that I want to live in. And I think the reason why I come to these meetings about the town landing is because that space is very important to me and to many people in town, and it's a community space where the community comes together. And the real issue that's taken place is we've gotten ourselves through this grant issue into a little bit of a mess where it seems we've given up our ability to manage the space, and specifically to really follow what Hester Simmons had in her will and what our town ordinance 9-3.3 states, which is the spaces for town residents only. And I have to say that the idea of changing the ordinance to match the mistake we made by giving that right up to govern the space feels like a bad move. And part of the reason I've felt a little bit upset in this process is, I know Mr. Golombeski mentioned at, I think it was the September meeting, that you had sort of forewarned in the grant process that there are strings that come with this and we shouldn't take this money. I know that $68,000 was raised privately in town for this project. That was outside of the money that was contributed from town funds. And I think, given the scale of what was done there, a much more simple design that really could have rehabilitated the space could have been executed without involving the DEM. And again, I know the people on the committee. I'm actually on the Friends of the Town Landing Committee that is overseeing some of that the private funds that were raised. And they're great people, and it was all great intentions. And I actually, I also felt that shared desire to see the field space be rehabilitated. It's just that we've gotten ourselves into this situation where, in Hester Simmons' will, and one thing that upsets me is in both the grant application and in the final report for the grant, Hester Simmons' will is quoted, but it's left, this part of the will is left out of the grant application and the final report, which says, from the will, it says, quote, "I give, devise, and bequeath unto the proper persons to receive the same for the town of Little Compton, Rhode Island, the plot of ground owned by me, bordering on the Atlantic Ocean in the Little Compton Township, for the use, pleasure, and benefit of the people in the community in perpetuity." And I was kind of shocked to see that that was left out of the grant application and out of the final report. And it only quoted the part that said, "It shall not be commercialized, free to all," which we actually consulted a lawyer who said that could read as free to all of the people in the community. It's referring to that sentence that is left out in the grant application. So it feels like a misrepresentation of what the space was supposed to be. And I think particularly for the population in town that does not have waterfront property and does not belong to a private ocean access club, that this space is really critical for community access to the water. And that's what Hester Simmons gave it to the town for. I don't think in 1949, before GPS and Instagram and Google Maps or whatever, that anyone, when she said community, I don't think she meant Boston and New Jersey and Maryland. She meant the people in town. And it seems pretty clear that the ordinance that we formed, that went through in 1980, that said for town residents only, was in response to protecting that part of her will. So, yeah, I'm all for giving the money back to the DEM. I don't know what that involves. I will say I already have had someone come forward to me to offer to help to do that. And I think it would be actually a surprisingly easy task for us to raise that money to pay back. And there is a parking issue there right now, and there will continue to be. But I think the really critical part is that we don't give up that ability to manage our own home communal space. That's the most important part for me, and I think for many of us. And I think that was probably in the hearts and minds of the people who made this all happen and fix the space too. I really do. I just think we need to make a move right now to stop this from being sort of in perpetuity out of our hands, especially since traffic flow up there is only going to increase. You know, from 1949 to 2000, you know, that place was still it was a pristine green field in 2005. It was really the last 15 years that things just really kind of exploded, and there's no reason to think that the traffic is going to decrease. So I think we're going to have an even more difficult access situation for town residents as time goes on. So I support this idea of whether it's petitioning, giving the money back, whatever we need to do, and honestly, would love to be, or maybe some of us who've really put a lot of work into this, be involved in the process and in communication with you all instead of putting all this work in and then just coming to a meeting and hearing the DEM said, no, you know, we'd really like to contribute to the process and help keep it open for the community. So whether that's a task force or a committee, I don't know. I know that there's the Friends of the Town Landing Committee that exists, but I think this is sort of a separate issue. And besides me, that entire committee also lives within walking distance of the landing. So I think it feels really important to have people who don't have that, you know, they don't have that easy C access to be represented in this interest. So that was longer than 4 minutes. Thank you for listening, and I'll yield to the next person.
Nice. Could I just clear up a couple things that I have questions on? I'm into this late. I wasn't a part of the design or why the folks asked for money from the DEM. My understanding was the will was included in the grant application, and the ordinance was included in the grant application. Is that not correct? Do you, Solicitor?
I think the point that was made was that the quotation was selective in terms of what was laid out as the town requirement.
Was the ordinance in the grant application?
I honestly have to say, I do not recall, the contents all the comments of the application. It's been about 3 years now.
Do you know the answer?
Yeah, that was 3 years, so I wasn't here, so.
I was on the committee, the subcommittee that was reviewing if I may, Patrick. And I was adamant, like, do not take state money. I mean, it's great, it's a free gift, but there's strings always attached to it. And I used the example of the boat ramp at Secundit Point. We took federal funds. Anybody who's a United States citizen can use Secundit Harbor's boat ramp because we took federal money to do it. And I was adamant about don't do it, but I was overruled by the committee because they saw free money, and that's what happened. They're actually trying, on the Wilbur's Woods Committee, they're trying to do the same thing again. They're trying to get grant money from the state, and I put my foot down. I said, look, I'll yell from the rooftops, we can't do it, we can't do it. I think I got an out there because of the way the will's written for Wilbur's Woods, the deed. But the reason, and I firmly believe this, the reason for all town residents to enjoy was taken out of the ordinance to put for the application was because DEM wouldn't accept it with that in it.
Where's the public process?
Yeah. And there was a few individuals on the committee that just their eyes were aglow with the free money, and I couldn't stop them.
So moving forward, thank you for that context. I wasn't aware of that. We're going to have a formal petition, and that's where we are. And I think we're going to direct the solicitor to do this. We have a motion. We have a second.
I would want to ask another question, if I may.
You sure can.
Can you do that? Can you give DEM back the money and say, here, no thanks?
Well, I actually don't have any experience with that at all, but I can find out.
Because I think before we start researching that option, we ought to find out if it is actually a possibility. Well, you know, you gave us 80 grand here, here's 80 grand back, we don't want to deal with your regulations.
If it's part of the motion, I can ask. I've actually never heard of that before, but I can find out.
Can I amend your motion to include that?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Let's hear the motion as it was stated.
I'll withdraw my motion. I'll withdraw it, sure. Withdraw the second, Paul? Oh, Andrew? Yeah, we can start over. Go ahead, Paul.
All right, so a motion then for two things, to ask the solicitor to see if you can return the money to DEM and get out from underneath the regulation, one, and two, if so, can we pursue it? And then two, can we petition them to designate so many parking places? I forget what the quote was, 15 or 12? Does anybody here?
It was 12.
Yeah, we'll go for 15. 15 spaces reserved for town residents only.
I'll second your motion.
Can we include the detail when we ask about refunding that we had existing conflicts that were not disclosed? It feels like that would be sort of extenuating circumstances, that it might not be something they've ever done, but to say, hey, there was information here that, this is really in conflict with existing.
Well, yeah, but this is for the solicitor and the lawyers to figure out, because if there's an angle, we can do it. Because I don't know if you've taken the drug, can you withdraw the drug from you? I don't know if that's possible.
Unfortunate choice of example, but nonetheless, I get the point, yeah. So the motion then is to charge the solicitor with determining whether or not funds can be returned to DEM that have been accepted. And if the answer to that is yes, to craft a petition which would permit the stated goal of X number of parking places for town residents only. Is that?
I got the impression that if you ask if the money can be returned, and the answer is yes, you would not need to petition for the.
Yes, that's fair. I'm anticipating what the answer is. You're right. So those then become two elements. Can it be returned? If so, that's what the direction will go. If not, are we able to petition as I described? Is there any further discussion on that? Yes.
Solicitor, do you anticipate getting this back by the next meeting, this information?
DEM, they got a lot to do, so I'll try.
My name is Ann Kubik, and I also am Old Harbor Road. And I'm just thinking in the near and dearness of the town landing and our communal home space, that it's not, I would encourage us not just to ask, can we return the money, but to exhaust our efforts in figuring out ways we could return the money. So not asking permission so much as looking for we can ask permission, but I think you can also explore different avenues in which we could craft our own way into our ability to repossess the land that was given to the community. So to really kind of be dogged about it is what I would just add to that moment.
I've been publicly one time in a situation like this. I said I was going to try hard, and the motion was for me to try harder. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
There's also enough room in the motion to the solicitor to give him flexibility to be creative.
Yes.
In how he approaches this.
I wrote this earlier, so some of it's already been covered, but I'm just going to read it all. Phil Casey, 286 West Main Road. Okay, at the December 21st town meeting, the town administrator announced that there will be no reserved parking for town residents at the landing because the town received grant money from the DEM. Prior to that, at the October 19th meeting, Town Solicitor DeSisto sounded optimistic about resident parking because of the unique situation and his correspondence with the DM sounded positive as well. So I was wondering why the surprising downturn. Could Mr. Texera elaborate on the discussion he just recently had with the DM? Was the will and ordinance discussed in relation to the grant? Was the situation shown on site to the DEM person he corresponded with? Did he ask about paying the grant funds back? Some residents of this town asked for half of the 24 parking spots. I don't know why we had to come before the council to ask for half when town ordinance 9-3.3 currently states that the Hester B. Simmons lot shall be for the use of town residents only. That being said, we are not asking to deny access to non-residents. Hester's last will and testament states in paragraph 4, for the use, pleasure, and benefit of the people in the community in perpetuity. The town council and the town solicitor have already acknowledged in a previous meeting that the word community in this paragraph means the people of Little Compton. Now, some people have been misled and therefore confused about part of Hester's will on the inscripted rock and in past newspaper articles that intentionally convey something different than its full meaning by only quoting select parts of it. The entire paragraph needs to be taken into context. Solicitor DeSisto has also confirmed that the DEM was provided a copy of the will and the ordinance 2 times, once at the time of application and again just recently. They continue to be disregarded by both grantor and grantee. This grant would never have gone through if the terms of these important documents had been respected and followed. Therefore, the grant agreement should be deemed illegitimate and grant funds returned. What is the point of having an ordinance if it is not followed, even to a small degree? And more importantly, since when is it okay to disregard and dishonor a person's last will and testament? What Hester Simmons left to this town is now under control of the Rhode Island DEM. Returning the grant money now would be a good start to making things right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Speaking for the council, I'm very grateful for the span and depth of what you've provided. If I was tone deaf in hearing it the last time, I didn't miss it this time. Thank you. Are you ready to vote? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Good luck, Tony.
Thank you.
Old business 2.
The next item of business is to receive the report of 2 studies sponsored by the Van Buren Charitable Foundation and the Little Compton community with support from the Agricultural Conservancy Trust. Is it just over my shoulder?
You have it on here in front of you,
Yeah.
and it's over your shoulder.
Yeah, great.
Good evening,
Yes, sir.
everyone. Rusty Cabot, I'm one of the trustees of the Ag Trust. When we came to the council in July, at the end of that briefing, I mentioned a couple of things that we had in works, one of which was a effort to secure some funding in order to gather data and perform some analysis. We, in fact, were able to acquire that funding, part of it from the Van Buren Foundation, some other donations and contributions by the Ag Trust, and some of the town committees, and we've moved forward to commission 2 studies, and I would like to update you on where we stand with that. Next slide, please. So there, as we all know, are a lot of items in town that people are talking about, and they all apply to what the town's going to look like in the future. And some of them include how much land do we conserve? Have we conserved enough? Have we conserved Not enough, what impact does land conservation have on real estate values? What does it do to housing availability? You know, how can we do something to address having more young working families able to move into town? All these things everyone has an opinion about. But when you get right down to it, there's very little data on which to hang a decision. And these two studies are an effort that was started by the Ag Trust for our own purposes, but we think can benefit the town to give more information to the residents and to the decision makers in town about how that future could or possibly should look. All these studies and all the results are going to be available to everyone when they're all done, but I'd like to tell you exactly what we are about to, or what we've embarked on. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the first study is being done by Camoin and Associates. They are looking at a couple of different things. The first thing that they're looking at is the fiscal impact of different land use types. There was a study like this done in 1994. Essentially, we're asking them to do an update to that study, and what the outcome of that portion of the study will be is an analysis of how much revenue you make from the 6 different land use types that you see on the slide, and how much you then spend for each of those land use types, so that you have some indication of where your revenue is coming from and where it's going in relation to the use of the town. The other part of what we're asking them to do is look at the real estate values over time for the town and compare them to like communities and see if there, in particular, is some correlation between land conservation and real estate prices. And the outcome of that, I think, will be one of the items that will inform decisions that that you make and we make as an Ag Trust in particular, but that the town makes moving forward about how the town should grow, not grow, look in the future, and I think will be one of the cornerstones for future decision making. Next slide. The second study is being done by a company called Agency Landscape and Planning. I am quite interested in the outcome of this one, actually, because this looks at 2 different scenarios looking into the future. The first scenario is going to be one in which we do nothing different than we are doing currently. There's no changes to zoning, there's no changes to land acquisition. Basically, we just take the status quo and project that forward and see what happens to the town. The second scenario is one in which we ask them to look at another option. Some changes in zoning, changes in land acquisition strategies, things that could impact how the land use of the town looks in the future from a perspective of our choice of that future, as opposed to just accepting it if we leave things as in the status quo. You can see what some of the outputs are that we should get for each of those scenarios. And this sort of analysis is not by any stretch of the imagination going to be prescriptive, because it's obviously looking into the future and no one is going to be able to predict what's going to happen. But it should inform us about some options that are available if we do nothing, which may be the course that we want to take, or if we somehow change what we do from the perspective of planning for the future. We're in the process right now of putting together some focus groups for them to help shape that other scenario. We're looking at getting them to accept input from farmers, fishermen, tradespeople, longtime residents, new residents, young residents with families, older folks that are in town, to better understand why people are in Little Compton, what they value about Little Compton, so that they can then design that scenario, that second scenario of what the future would look like based on what they understand the townspeople's interests are. Next slide. So from a timeline, along the top, above the horizontal line, at the very top are a couple of dates which include the convening of the legislature, when we think the legislature will adjourn, and the financial town meeting. You can see all the way at the left, both above and below the horizontal lines, the analysis and data gathering have started for both scenarios. The Camoin land use and real estate fiscal type analysis is above the horizontal line, sort of in the middle as you go across, looking for dates and milestones, and the scenario development is at the bottom. Really, the takeaway from this is that neither of these studies will be ready until roughly the middle of 2024. We are looking at probably the end of June-ish before we have the ability for road shows to describe what they have accomplished. Next slide. So as I said before, there's a lot of chatter about what the future would look like. These studies are all using Little Compton specific data. They are focused on what we could do in the future and should provide not only the residents but the decision makers in the town with a foundation for hopefully better decision making about what our future looks like. You know, have some actual analysis of data from which to depart and shape the outcome of what our town is going to look like as time goes on. Any questions?
I just have one. I don't know if you have the answer because your study's not done yet. But study number 2, scenario B, what would it look like, the planning strategic modifications? You mentioned changing ordinances. Do you have any specific ordinances that you're looking at?
No, absolutely nothing that we're specifying at this point. And in fact, maybe there wouldn't have to be any ordinance change depending on what their scenario looks like. However, things that everyone has been discussing, or people have been discussing recently about perhaps clustered housing or accessory dwelling units, things like that could be something where maybe we have to do some zoning changes. Maybe there's other ordinance changes that we would want to do if we collectively chose that path. But it's all sort of TBD.
So the Agency Landscape and Planning LLC, the student study 2, they're going to go through all our ordinances?
Yes. Well, to some degree at least. They understand what we currently do, and they've been given a lot of data from the town hall here and the agencies that work here. And they're looking at also the changes in Rhode Island law that have come to pass in 2024 now. So they're putting all that together as part of the brew that goes into the 2 scenarios.
Do they make recommendations, or is it just a study?
Well, they will, I'm sure, be able to offer a recommendation if we ask for it. What I expect as an outcome is that they will give us these scenarios and say, if you go down this path, here is what it will likely look like in the future, as opposed to saying, go down this path because it will look like this. But they'll give us the 2 paths, and then it's up to us to choose which one we take and how we implement it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But really, it's about giving us some background data, some foundational data, and then looking at what their perspective of a future is if we do nothing, or if we do some sort of changes, which they will, again, look at from the perspective of the input they get from the groups that they will talk to, which obviously could include you as well. I don't think we have, do we have the council on as one of their focus groups? Okay.
This is the kind of product that would seem to me to have immediate application to the question that we've just finished discussing. Were we able to put it in the context? Now, I'm not suggesting that town landing is a specific outcome, but if we were able to take, I think your intention is to develop a product that enables us to say, this is a path we can take, or this is a path. Well, let's compare it to what the study results were. It showed the following kinds of things. Is that the purpose? Okay. Great. Any other questions?
Good.
Thank you.
Oh, we got one.
Yes.
So at this point, we're putting together a list of folks that are representative of the town. They're going to be relatively small groups, and we're going to have the agency people that are doing the scenario analysis talk to them, ask them questions, and get their inputs. Well, we're taking, if you would like to be on one, we're taking input from people. We're actually putting together a list of people that we think would be interested and reaching out to them to see if they would participate. But at this point, if you are interested in participating, I think we would be happy to have it. But we do want to have a cross-section of town. So if we have one group that's, 150 people and the rest of them are only 2 or 3 people, we're probably not going to take all 150, because we want to have that cross-section of opinion so that they can look at what's important and try to pull together the threads of what people move here for and live here for, right? So that they can put together the scenario, the second scenario, that answers some of those important aspects of the community and the culture of Little Compton that are common across everyone.
To be clear for the recording, the question from the audience was, how does a person, in essence, raise his or her hand and say, I'd like to be part of this? And the answer is that there's an effort to be a cross-section, but if you have that interest, I would say speak to someone on the Agricultural Conservancy Trust about your interest so that they can add that to the list. Thanks for the question.
I'm happy to take your information tonight if you like.
Maybe, Rusty, you can have a sign-up list at the town hall or something of people who are interested.
Yes, we'll
Something like that
try to
would be-
do something like that, yeah. Or,
Because poor Carol's going to get the brunt of it. It's going to happen. Everybody's going to be curious. Well, how do I do this? How do I do that?
we'll do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate the report very much and very timely. Thanks. New business. Set the time and date for the annual financial town meeting during the third full week of May as per section 301 of the Home Rule Charter. Madam Clerk, what is your?
If you're going to hold true to your Tuesday evening, that would be May 21st.
Seems no reason to depart from the Tuesday evening scenario. Motion is made.
May 21st, I'll second it.
May 21st, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. May 21st, 2024 is the date for the financial town meeting. At 7 p.m. Second item of new business is a letter from Chief Petrin acknowledging the successful completion of a probationary period by probationary firefighter Evan Willard, and he's seeking his promotion to firefighter third class, effective 27 December 2023.
Motion to approve.
Discussion on that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Congratulations to firefighter Willard. A proposal from the Harbor Commission to have Chapter 9 of the town ordinances amended. Consider setting a public hearing date.
I can tell you that we reviewed the ordinance, and it's in order for a public hearing at your convenience.
Is Gary going over this?
He's actually gone over it with us. We had raised some issues with him in terms of the Harbor Commission, and he answered them and actually satisfied us on this. So I think it's ready to go.
Okay.
Motion for a public hearing on this. Do we have a timetable?
This type of ordinance doesn't require 3 weeks of advertising, so your town code says it shall be at your next scheduled council meeting, the first item of business.
If I might insert a comment here, Section 9.3 of this ordinance regulates the use of public recreation areas. And we may want to insert something, since it specifically calls out the Hester Simmons lot. We may want to take advantage of that to add something to what the Harbor Commission properly is under their purview has proposed. And the chair of the Harbor Commission is with us, so were he to be, have a counter or any comment on the urgency of what you have.
We're trying to get, this established so that the harbor master had a set of policies that made it easier for him to regulate what he thinks are safety improvements to go into. So if the timeline by adding in highway for the Simmons lot stretches it out months, we'd rather separate.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Leave that particular section as is for now. We'll see how things shake out. If things need to be changed afterwards, then it can happen, but keep it as it is. My
So-
only other question is it okay to do this without Gary here? He really explained this to us and did a good job.
If the answer to that were just wait till one more meeting, I would say we could wait, but he won't return for 3 meetings.
Well, it would be February 22nd if we were going to do it.
What's that?
February 22nd is when we'll be back. So
And-
if we were going to wait until he came back, then that's the date.
It'd be a delay of a month and a half, basically.
If I may, too, Councilman Mataronis has been to every Harbor Commission meeting. He's actually with us, the language changes we made, the rationale between us and the Harbor, asked him why we want to do this. As usual, he's extremely well informed with what we're trying to do here. Our opinion is that we have his concurrence on what we're trying to do.
Thank you. So I'm assuming he is either watching this or has the opportunity to watch it, and will close off this with the recommendation of the solicitor to say, and of the Harbor Commission Chair, to move this promptly to the earliest could be what?
Your next council meeting.
The next meeting. Any reason it couldn't be that?
I can say that Gary did speak to me, and he said he was comfortable with this passing.
Okay, okay. Then would there be a motion to move for a public hearing on the 18th of
So moved.
January?
Second?
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next is to receive a recommendation from the administrator for the purchase of a new truck for Public Works, as a current vehicle does not pass inspection. Any,
Motion to approve. What size truck is this, Tony? Well, I'll wait for a second.
Second.
motion is made and seconded. It's in
Is-
This is in that 350.
Why am I not seeing it?
It's on there.
Right on the front page.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Are you, does that
So
satisfy your
that
question?
satisfied my curiosity.
Any other questions or comments? You ready to vote? All in,
Are you going to be clear as to which one we're authorizing?
oh, excuse me.
Are they all the same truck, basically, except for the one without the plow available?
I would recommend that we go with the first one.
Okay.
That and complete, because they
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the Jack Madden Fleet F-350.
I'll second it.
The motion is made and seconded to approve a purchase of the Jack Madden fleet truck. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And the next item is communications. It's an email request from the Prevention Coalition for funding in FY '25 to be increased to 1,000 due to rising costs.
I'll move that.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks. The next is the consent file, 3 items.
Motion to place the consent calendar on file unless someone wants to pull one.
I have one to pull.
Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the first one is a copy of the draft host community agreement with the town of Portsmouth and South Coast Wind Energy. So I had the opportunity to talk to Marissa DeSatel today, the lawyer for Little Compton, representing us. I figured I would give an update. If you go to page 2, section 1, 1.1 on our handout, the town which is Portsmouth and South Coast shall cooperate on finalizing the routes for the offshore export cables, including minor modifications to the proposed routes that have been submitted to the siting board. The town agrees to not oppose the project and/or onshore export cables before the Rhode Island Energy Siting Board. So this is a draft. They haven't signed anything, but that indicates if they do, they will not go and oppose any of these cables. And if you go to page 5, section 6, the total amount of the payments, the amount of $23,224,673. So they are right now negotiating with a copy of the lawyers to settle this and take Portsmouth out of intervening in here anymore. As everyone knows, Little Compton is an intervener. You know, this council, and I'll speak for myself and hopefully the rest, looking out for the town's interest concerning the wind turbines. You know, with the aesthetics, and the town is going to experience some damages, which South Coast has already said is going to happen. This has got nothing to do with anti-wind or pro-wind. You know, when we sit here as a council, we're looking out for the interests of Little Compton. We know there's going to be damages. We see there's going to be $23 million given to the host town. I think we're going to need to enter into negotiations with a mitigation package for Little Compton sometime in this near future. So I wanted to point that out to everyone, that these things are happening. Thank you.
Any further discussion? With that comment made and incorporated, is there, I'll seek a vote on the motion to file the consent calendar. All in
favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next and last is the payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
What did you say? Aye. All are in favor. With that, the business before us is completed. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention and for a helpful discussion.